You have exactly 3 seconds to like and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, I'll appear in your dreams tonight. To ask for a donation for that cup of coffee, link below.
It doesn't matter whether a piece of information is true or false. If it's repeated enough times, it will become true. This argument was put forward by Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister of the German society. And that's especially true in cinema. Through the camera lens, many details that seem familiar are actually inaccurate. They've been repeated in hundreds of films to the point that audiences take them for granted. In this video, let's debunk some of the misconceptions about the military that movies have inadvertently or intentionally instilled in viewers' mind. Today we won't be going into the obvious absurdity, such as the main character's overpowered skills, or the supporting character's always says. Instead, the content will focus on military details that do not exist. But the filmmakers added those lines to make the work more appealing. Among these, scenes of bomb, mines, or explosions almost always serve as an extremely effective catalyst, and this will also be the starting point for a series exploring the military misconceptions that films have helped create. In most action movies that feature scenes involving landmines, the situation is usually depicted as a prolonged, intense sequence of events. Common trick is that when the character accidentally steps on a dry, sharp clicking sound is heard and everything immediately comes to a standstill. The person stood motionless, not daring to move a foot, because any slight movement from their position would cause the Quam Min to explode. From that moment on, the intensity will heighten. The character or those around them begin to react by using heavy objects to weigh down the debris, or digging a personal hole and quickly jumping in to avoid the flying shrapnel. This design is so common that it leads many viewers to assume that Min only explodes when someone steps on him and then lifts their foot off. However, the reality is quite the opposite, specifically regarding anti-personnel landmines. In military applications, their operating principles are much simpler and more brutal than what is depicted in movies. The vast majority of these types of devices are designed to inflict immediate damage upon sufficient forces applied. That is, the moment the foot touches down and applies pressure to the nib, the activation process is complete. There are no pauses, think, and certainly no lifting your foot before it explodes. In fact, based on activation method, this series of weapons would be divided into 2 main groups: pressure activated and entanglement activated. In the first type, the mechanism of action is quite direct. When a sufficiently strong force is applied to the surface, the trigger will be activated immediately. This means that passers-by will have virtually no chance to react because the entire process happens in a split second. Some models that were once widely used include the Soviet PMN, and these types of organisms lie hidden beneath the soil, making them difficult to detect with the naked eye and causing serious damage at the point of contact. Meanwhile, explosives operate in a different way. Instead of reacting to pressure, they are connected by a thin string or something similar. When someone accidentally pulls or touches the wire, the internal mechanism will be names like Panzer are typical examples of how they are often deployed in wooded environments or complex terrain to increase the element of surprise. Additionally, they allow for the expansion of the area affected by people passing through and can be activated without direct guidance. But despite their differences in mechanisms, both groups mentioned above share the common characteristic of reacting instantly, leaving no delay for further processing. In a real war environment, no enemy would be kind enough to let opportunists escape once they've fallen into a trap. However, the idea of a device that would only explode when the person stepping on it lifted their foot has also surfaced. The argument is that instead of inflicting direct damage, they would keep the victim, forcing nearby teammates to gather to provide support or find a way to deal with the situation. However, the majority of these remained only ideas or experiments, with almost none being put into official use. At first glance, this approach seems very reasonable because it creates both psychological pressure and slows down the pace of movement of the entire team. But in reality, military forces have long had far more effective methods to achieve the same goal. And one of them is the butterfly mine. This is a small device that can be deployed in large numbers over a wide area. If you accidentally step on it, it will activate almost immediately. However, the severity of the injury is usually not enough to be fatal, mainly causing serious damage to the foot or lower leg. The shelving effectively incapacitated the victim and added a burden to the entire unit. That situation would typically require at least 2 additional people to assist with the ambulance service. In addition, another soldier is responsible for carrying the equipment of the support team. Thus, with just a single butterfly mine weighing less than, the enemy could slow down the pace of marching or attacking of the entire team. It should also be noted that not all types of snare traps activate when stepped on. Some types are designed with very high load-bearing thresholds for use in heavy vehicles, such as tanks or armored vehicles. In such a, even if you jump and bounce with your whole body, the weapon will not be able to be activated. In other words, each group of minions is created for a specific purpose, and the level of danger also depends on the target they are aimed at. But fundamentally, the actual operation of this weapon system is completely different from what is commonly seen on aircraft. Another extremely valuable type of scene worth mentioning is defusing bombs or timed explosives. In the horror film, they stage scenes with many tense moments. The ticking sound echoed continuously as the clock counted down amidst a multitude of colorful wires. The protagonist must make the crucial decision to precisely cut one of them. Given the right circumstances, the explosion could have been prevented. Cutting the wrong part of the bomb will trigger it immediately. Despite the suspense and excitement, all those details are actually completely. Now, try putting yourself in the position of the person planting the bomb. Would you want the thing that needs to be hidden to be constantly making noise, or even displaying a time for the enemy to track? The answer is definitely no. Before we continue, CD Media would like to introduce the main sponsor of this Audible, the world's largest licensed audiobook library from Amazon, is where you get the earliest access to original knowledge and the greatest works on the planet. Horrible lets you read anytime you're busy, with incredibly immersive cinematic sound quality. Specifically, register via the link exclusively for CD Media audience members to receive a free month of access along with a bonus book. Adding sound or timer displays is not only inconvenient and increases the risk of detection, but it is also completely pointless from a tactical standpoint. In practice, these weapons are often designed to be minimalist, consisting of only 2 main components: an explosive charge and a time detonator. Fewer assembly parts mean faster installation and reduced risk of operational problems. Specific, the entire structure can be housed in a metal box, a plastic casing, or shipping container, with a timer mechanism integrated directly in. A typical ignition mechanism comes in 2 common forms. The first, which operates similarly to a when the gear system will scan for a specified period of time, reaching the endpoint, a mechanism that releases the pin or creates a collision, thereby igniting the explosive pack. The key features of this type are its high side profile, simple design, and ability to operate reliably in a wide range of environmental conditions. However, accuracy is not always absolute due to errors arising from the pneumatic mechanism or the movement of internal components. Notably, this type of device typically doesn't use electrical wires and is sealed within the explosive chuck, making it virtually impossible to cut the wires to disable it, and certainly not possible to use a precise timer to cut them at the last moment like in the movies. The second mechanism, which is more common in modern design, is the electric detonator. When activated, the system will begin a countdown via its electrical circuit and usually a battery. When the cycle is complete, the circuit will close. The capacitor immediately discharges a current strong enough to activate the detonator. Compared to the first type of mechanism, this one allows for more flexible installation and higher However, they are also often designed to be airtight, minimizing the possibility of external interference. Therefore, the image of bundles of colorful ropes to choose from, as seen in movies, almost never accurately reflects reality. Even if some villain were to appear amused and deliberately leave the cutting, them would hardly neutralize the bubble, as mentioned. Whenever the circuit is interrupted, in addition to the explosion, panic will ensue. In other words, by cutting the wire, you are directly helping the opponent complete their task without the system having to run until the scheduled time. But if they were serious, no noodle bomb expert would choose such a risky option. More importantly, the explosive devices themselves are often designed with multiple layers of anti-tampering mechanisms, from backup circuits and decoys to tamper detection sensor that make disabling it almost never a simple operation. And even under ideal conditions, the success rate is not as high as what the movies portray. Accordingly, the task force will choose a safer approach. In many cases, the area where the explosive device is found will be completely isolated and then destroyed on site using methods such as waiting for the device to be covered with a white powder. In complex, high-risk situation, specialized robots can be deployed using tools such as high-pressure water jets to directly impact actuator mechanism, disrupt its operation. Additionally, if condition permit, the bomb will also have to be moved to a safer area for disposal or placed in special vehicles designed to control and minimize the impact of the explosion. The solution of cutting the right wire to remove the detached mass is actually just an exaggerated detail. Out here, handling such incidents is always based on safety principles. There's no room for adventurous side. The third entry on today's list is arguably one of the most familiar explosion motifs in film. Whenever the protagonist finds himself in a situation where he has to fight a large group alone, he always seems to have a chance to turn the tables. He raised gun, aimed it at a nearby fuel source such as gasoline, oil, or an explosive charge, and fired to detonate it remotely. In an instant, a massive explosion occurred. Numerous enemies around. From a position of being overwhelmed, the situation immediately reversed. But in real life, the story completely different. First, let's talk about gasoline and oil, which are frequently turned into bombs in this power plant. This type of liquid is not as explosive as many people think. The substance with the highest potential for emitting vapor is gasoline vapor mixed with air in a certain ratio. If those conditions aren't met, the mixture won't even be able to catch fire. So, when you shoot at a fuel tank, the most likely thing to happen isn't a spectacular explosion, but simply some of the fuel getting mixed up locally if there's a really large amount of heat involved. Even in worst-case scenarios, the fire usually only flares up in one spot, making it very difficult to create a large, destructive fireball like in the movies. This is especially true in open spaces where gasoline vapors are quickly dispersed outwards. Furthermore, ordinary acupuncture needles cannot always produce sparks. To accomplish this, most warheads only penetrate the target, causing localized deformation and damage, and cannot be used as a reliable ignition source for military explosives. Like things are even more unrealistic. These materials are all designed with very high stability to ensure safety during transportation and use. They can't explode just because they're hit by gunfire. This type of plastic can even withstand being heated, molded, or subjected to strong impacts without any damage. To activate it, specialized detonator system is needed to generate a sufficiently large impulse to initiate the reaction. Without this link, the entire explosive charge would be virtually exposed to any normal impact. Firing one or more bullets at an explosive device will simply deform it. In other words, the idea of using guns to remotely activate something practically only exists in movies. Creating a controlled explosion is a complex engineering process, not something that can be accomplished with just basic skill. For handheld weapons with wing-type projectiles, the type of ammunition used is equally common. In the movie, it's almost transformed into a perfect cleaning tool. The character simply pulls the pin out with their teeth and throws it away. Wherever the grenade lands, the enemy is wiped out. There's virtually no room for error. However, the far less impressive. First, using teeth to scrape off a small amount of grenade. It's not entirely impossible. But the problem is they're really tough. To unzip a zip, you need to apply considerable force, and the operation must be performed precisely along its axis. Using the mouth makes it very difficult to control the direction of the jerk accurately. As a result, instead of flipping the latch, what sometimes pops out is your own. In short, this is an action that is very popular with scholars, but they would certainly never encourage it. Secondly, the story about timing the throw is also a very cinematic detail. In the movie, the character can pull the pin, calmly count down the seconds, and then release the grenade so that it explodes, giving the enemy no time to react. Out here, this method is no different than playing a game of chance. It's true that each type of grenade has a stated burn time, but that's just a theoretical figure. Due to high demand and mass production, these values are always subject to certain discrepancies. It's impossible to be absolutely accurate. In it, for example, if a grenade can be designed with a 5-second burn delay, that doesn't mean you're allowed to count to 4 seconds before throwing it. In fact, their delay can vary depending on many factors such as storage conditions, temperature, humidity, and even quality differences between production batches or manufacturing plants. Some of these bombs will burn slower than expected, while others will explode sooner than normal. Therefore, no one with combat experience would want to gamble their life on a number that cannot be trusted at all. In addition, the destructive power of this type of weapon is often exaggerated in films. Essentially, the effective range of a grenade is calculated based on the probability of causing injury. Not that every target within that range is guaranteed to be eliminated. Similar to the slow burning time, the dispersion of shrapnel is not as precise or uniform as many people think, even with modern design, like which features grooves on the inside of the casing to improve. Shrapnel still flies in many unpredictable directions, not to mention the more common smooth-running types, which are even. As a result, even when located in an area considered, the target's chances of survival remain, especially if there is a shield or if you know how to minimize the contact. These variables make using grenades in real life anything but simple, as it's often depicted, and require adherence to many strict. And the final truth in today's video will be about how the explosions were there. They almost always appear, unleashing a massive fireball that erupts. The protagonist turned his back at full speed and escaped by the hair's breadth. At most, you'll only be thrown a few meters away, and sometimes just falling to the ground is enough to avoid all the danger. So, are things really that simple? First of all, not all explosions during excavations create spectacular smoke and fire like in the movies. In many cases, the real danger comes from the shock wave and flying debris. They spread at extremely high speed, overwhelming the ability of humans or conventional means to react. That means you either get caught in the explosion, or you'll be unharmed by standing a distance from the light source from the start. Even extreme pressure for a very short period of time is enough to cause serious damage to the body, especially to organs containing air such as the lungs or ears. Furthermore, while the act of lying down to avoid danger is correct in principle, it is often depicted inaccurately. The safe position is lying face down, covering your ears and keeping your mouth slightly open to reduce pressure differences. If she simply lay down, half of the victim's body could still be affected. Severe injuries may manifest as visible trauma, while milder cases may present with symptoms such as bleeding from the ear, nose, or mouth, even with landmines buried underground. Pressing the entire body against the ground can sometimes cause the impact to be transmitted directly to the chest, increasing risk of internal injury. But generally speaking, lying down is helpful in most cases. The only catch is that it can't make you completely immune to the explosion if you're already within the blast radius. This is the first episode of the series. The misconceptions about military affairs created by movies have come to an end. Hopefully, this video will provide you with enjoyable and informative moments. If you have any questions or would like to share your opinion, please leave a comment below. And now, see you in the next part.